as luck would have it, an opportunity happened backstage with our next speaker, Jeff Hoffman, who is a master storyteller. And so we agreed very quickly that I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I had planned and tell you some stories that I'd planned. And then I think Jeff's going to tell you some stories, and maybe we'll mix it up a little bit here. So I'm going to motor through some of my comments so we have an opportunity to have a conversation with you. So I do want to talk to you about luck and tell you a little bit, a couple of stories as to how luck played out with me, but I'm not going to talk about this kind of luck. You know, not the luck that wins the lotto and now you never have to talk to a venture guy again. This is a term sheet that was worth about $6.5 million for the guy who had all the right numbers in the right place. Pre-money value of I'll never have to talk to a VC again, and he can do whatever he wants. But that's a hard term sheet to get. It takes a lot of work. I'd rather do Sand Hill Road than try to invest my fundraising energies that way. I also am not going to talk about the divine hand of intervention that gets, convinces you somehow to take the earlier flight, or, thank God, got a lot of people off of that flight without severe injury. That's a different kind of luck. I want to talk about the kind of luck that we create for ourselves when we get our lucky break. And a lucky break really is an opportunity that comes to us, and is a time when all of the work that we have done as entrepreneurs, as students, as people in the world, puts us in a place that we can take advantage of those situations. So the story starts for me in 1995. And it is just a point in my career when I made the pivot from being a journalist to running the demo conference, which was for me a transformative experience and really started me on the path to entrepreneurship. Now, I had the privilege of being an entrepreneur kind of within a large corporation, with Ziff Davis Publishing, and I was running a new magazine, and there was an issue in our executive suite. The company had had some problems with an executive who, let's just say, wasn't behaving most appropriately. And I went to HR and I said, I think we need to pay attention to this and take preventative action before a lawsuit ensues. And a week later, the head of HR came to me and offered me a severance package. So my bad luck, I didn't really think ahead to how they might perceive this situation. I thought I was doing them a favor. They saw it as an opportunity to reduce their ranks. But that opened up another opportunity for me to interface with luck again. In the spring, I was interviewing for a job with Stuart Alsop, the guy who founded the demo conference. And Stuart, at that point, had a conference that really rested on who he was as an analyst and an imprimatur in the industry. And he would go around and he would collect up all of the companies and the new products that he thought were interesting, and he'd put them on stage at this conference. And I had attended the conference, and he asked me what I thought about it, and I told him in great detail that I thought it had some problems. And over lunch, I just did the unusual thing for me. I told him exactly what I thought. And at the end of the lunch, he had this little wry smile, and he said, well, if you think it's so bad, why don't you come fix it? So my good luck. I was able to share an opinion at the right point and the right time, and it seemed to resonate, and I got a chance to go do something pretty fantastic, which was to take the reins of this event, which had at that point been operating for about 5 years, as a show and tell for, at that time, some of the big companies in the industry. So I did my first demo conference in 1997, very much on the pattern that Stuart had established. A couple of shootouts, we brought in the big guys, Microsoft, Lotus, Borland. A couple of companies were launching for the first time, but that really wasn't what the event was about. It was about collecting up interesting new products and showing them to an audience of investors and corporate development people. Well, my bad luck, because this guy came up into my face. This is Roger McNamee, and he told me it was the worst conference he'd ever attended. He'd seen everything before, and it was a complete waste of his time. Now, I don't know what the other, 990 people in the audience thought, but I never wanted to see this guy in my face again. So I made some decisions at that point that were really about being defensive. Right? I decided that if he'd already seen everything, and if most of the audience were investors anyway, they saw this deal flow, I was going to change the event to be all about first-time product launches. And the good luck in that decision is that it completely shifted demo from an event that was about the big companies and what they might ship when, to an event that was all about startups and entrepreneurs. And that really changed the nature of the event, and it changed the nature of my career. In that same year, I invited a company called Hot Office to present at demo. Hot Office is a little company in Florida that no one had heard of, and I'd be surprised if you've heard of them. They weren't largely successful, but at the time, they created an application that allowed a user to use a web browser to do word processing and work with a spreadsheet, that kind of thing, various office applications. Well, people like Roger and others got up in my face again and said, this is the most stupid thing anyone could ever bring to a conference like this. This is about innovation, and no one is ever going to use a web browser to run software. It's just not designed for that. So my bad luck, I guess, a bad choice there. Let's see. What happened in '99, I already alluded to. I turned the event around. I made it all about startups and all about launches. And we had some incredible experiences there with companies that really did some amazing things. And I'm going to fast forward here because I want to optimize your time and mine with Jeff to talk about another bad decision here, or bad luck, which was all about timing. In 2000, I had co-founded a company called Papuli Sports, which is, by the way, my bad luck. You should never ask me to help you name a company, because I will choose a name that cannot be spelled or pronounced. But I started Papuli Sports. It was focused on women athletes, and it was an e-commerce and news site. We grew very quickly. We had an offer in the spring of 2000 to be acquired by Fogdog, which at that time was the leading e-commerce sports site. My bad luck, the timing, the company, Fogdog made its offer at $5 a share. Within a week in the diligence process, their shares dropped to 50 cents, and the deal was off. But I had some good luck in 2002 because that's the year that Salesforce.com announced the end of software. They launched at demo, and I was vindicated for my choice of Hot Office 3 years earlier. Now, I'm telling you these stories not to suggest that I'm particularly clever or even particularly lucky, but to talk about, as Devon said, when opportunity meets preparation, you can make your own luck. And the work you're doing here today, the work you're doing building your companies, isn't really about can you get lucky? Can the divine hand of Providence reach down and bless your company and make you successful? Can Lady Luck spin the wheel and suddenly you get funded and you're very successful? It's really about everything you bring to your business that can make you lucky and bring that elusive ingredient to your entrepreneur hero story. So in 95, when I made that decision to go to human resources, what I didn't do was really think about the full consequences of the decision I was making. I thought I was doing the right thing for the company, but I wasn't thinking about the company and what was the right thing in a grander context for them. So you make your luck by being clever about where you jump and when, and really understanding the full circumstance. I think our instincts often tell us to just dive right in as entrepreneurs, but I would say that you're the luckier for looking before you leap. But you have to have the courage of your convictions. When I sat down and talked to Stuart, he was kind of, I was actually interviewing for a different job. I really didn't have much to gain or lose, so I thought in telling him what I thought. But I felt that sharing it with him honestly would give him some value. I wasn't realizing I was in a different interview, but I was able to be very frank and very candid with him in a way that created this new opportunity. So knowing what you feel and having the courage to stick to those convictions and to share those in the right environment will bring you a new kind of luck. You got to listen to your critics. It is so easy to decide that you can dismiss that face of Roger McNamee that still haunts me today is something that I should just go get some therapy about and get over. But the reality is that by listening to him, And it drove me to make some decisions about the event that completely turned the fortunes of that program and, frankly, of my own career. So listening to your critics, taking from those conversations the pieces of value that can allow you to create newness is a kind of luck that you need to embrace. Don't limit your opportunity to be lucky by only listening to the people who tell you what you want to hear. But you have to trust what I think of as informed instincts. And this isn't just that gut feeling that says, gosh, I think that hot office guy is going to be big one day. Because in fact, they weren't. The company ended up going out of business before Salesforce even launched. But knowing that something in that was valuable, something in the way that I reacted to it was valuable, and taking that hunch and comparing it to other pieces of information that I had, that informed instinct allowed me to move forward with that choice. You bring so much experience to your instincts. It's not just about a gut feel or a hunch, but it's all the experience you have in building your business, in having been in business, having been in school, having done everything that you've done that you bring to every moment of opportunity, moment of luck, and you've got to trust those instincts. But you also have to make the changes you need to make. Right? It is not lucky to hold to your convictions in a way that does not allow you to be flexible. Take the opportunity to listen to your heart, listen to your gut, listen to your critics, and then do what you need to do for your business. Because sticking to your knitting can often be the most unlucky thing that you can choose to do. I would say that luck, however it is, favors the swift. When you know something is right in your heart, go for it. Had I been able to move more quickly, perhaps, with our acquisition discussions with Fogdog, I would be here giving a very different talk. So taking those instincts and moving forward, making your own luck happen faster, but I would say doing that without being overzealous. Be patient, wait for those right moments. And then I would say, when you do get it right, you got to own it. It's easy to say, here was Hot Office, here's Salesforce, wasn't that a coincidence? Boy, was I lucky. And I tend to default to that side of the humility scale. But you know what? I was right about Hot Office. And I was right about Salesforce. And I want to own that. Because that's not luck that made that happen. That was my experience, my instincts, my ability to make those decisions. And I think oftentimes, as entrepreneurs, we decide that luck is the grand hand that makes these good things happen. And we don't own our successes. And I want you to own those successes, small and large, that you make every day because of the work you do. So the last thing I just want to say very quickly, and then I'm going to turn the stage back over to Jeff, is that I hope you all get very lucky, but you're going to have to get to work to do it. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you. So by the way, to Chris's point there, I definitely, Chris and I have talked about this. You know, it seems that the harder I work, the luckier I get. And there is truth in that and everything that Chris just told you, that luck is important. You take all you can get, but the harder you work and the more engaged you are. People always tell me, Jeff, you know, you've just been really, really lucky. And the truth is, I've been really, really engaged. The more you get out of your house, out of your office, meet new people, introduce yourself, go places and try things, the more luck you seem to run into. As a prime example would be, if you came to this event today and made no attempt to meet somebody that you do not know and talk to them, you might have just missed your next pass at luck. Very quickly, my background, I've been doing startups for my entire life. Our biggest one, I've done 7 of them in internet, technology, entertainment, media. The one that I was part of that was our most successful was Priceline.com. Priceline was a scratch startup like everything you guys are working on. Today it's got a market cap of about $45 billion. So I've been through small, large, all the different stages of entrepreneurship in different industries. I spend my time now supporting entrepreneurs around the world, working with a lot of entities from the White House and the State Department to a lot of foreign governments, et cetera. As a matter of fact, just a quick side note, I just did the keynote speech at the G20 Young Entrepreneurs Alliance event in Moscow that was attended by entrepreneurs from 30 different countries. And I do have to tell you guys, the Canadian delegation rocked. They were pretty fantastic in Moscow. I did the city tour of Moscow with them, but you guys should be proud of what your team there. So I spent my whole life launching companies. And people ask me, Jeff, what are you doing today? I don't launch companies anymore, I launch entrepreneurs. And that's what I want to talk about. What is some of the key ingredients? And I'm going to go pretty fast because Chris and I want to do some Q&A. But I want to talk about what's the key ingredient in launching entrepreneurs and why that's important, and what is the difference between launching companies and launching entrepreneurs, because I made that transition relatively recently. In support of that, I made a decision, by the way, after, like I said, about 7 startups. Priceline was the 5th one, so I'd been doing this a while already, that I wanted to give back. And I think, by the way, every one of you in this room owes that same sort of debt to the field of entrepreneurship. Reach behind you as many times as you can in your life and grab somebody's hand and pull them forward as well. The best thing we can do as entrepreneurs is support each other and support our community. And I have been trying to do that, so I decided I would take some time off to mentor entrepreneurs. And it turned into, I've been on the road pretty much for a year and a half now, literally to every continent, traveling all over the world, looking at entrepreneurial ecosystems and meeting entrepreneurs all over the planet. I recently was mentoring entrepreneurs across Africa, down in South America. I just came up from Mexico, Guatemala. I was in Turkey before that. What's interesting is that there are so many, our similarities, the gap between our differences keeps shrinking. We as entrepreneurs around the world are getting more and more similar, and that's because we're better connected through technology and social media. So I've been studying what makes the best entrepreneurs tick and what's important, and what can we learn from entrepreneurs all over the world. And I want to tell you this story, because this is the one that really got to me. So I got asked, I think this was a White House mission. Jeff, would you go to Egypt to mentor entrepreneurs? And this was a pivotal moment in my thought process that I want to share with you guys this story. I don't know if you can see on the left of that picture, I'm standing in front of the Great Pyramids in Giza in Egypt there. So I go to Egypt. The mission from Washington is, go teach entrepreneurship to post-revolutionary Egyptians, all right? So I go there with this mission of teaching entrepreneurship. And I get there, and by the way, this is what it feels like figuratively before I left. I call just to make sure they know I'm coming. The phone rings, ring, ring, and I get a recording. Hi, this is Egypt. We're fighting a revolution right now, and we can't come to the phone. Could you call us back later? So already I feel like, what am I doing? And the reason I put an entrepreneurship sale is because I felt like I had my cart, and I was going down the street, the dirt of Egypt, saying, entrepreneurship, get some right here. And I'm selling entrepreneurship. And here's the lesson that I learned, because I thought that was our goal, right? We're selling entrepreneurship. But the lesson that I learned is entrepreneurship is not the goal. It's the means. Because what happened when I went, and I'm only using Egypt as an example. It's true everywhere, and I'll explain that in a little bit. When I was there in Egypt and I was saying, who wants to be an entrepreneur? And by the way, I could walk down the street of Montreal and ask people. If I say, who wants to be an entrepreneur? Some limited number of people say yes. The rest of the people say, I don't even know entrepreneurship. That's not for me. Because it's the wrong question. When I went down the street and said, who wants to be arbitrarily just be an entrepreneur for the sake of being an entrepreneur? The people in Egypt did not by and by respond, say, me, all I think about is entrepreneurship. They didn't say that. Here's what happened instead. I felt like my mission was a failure. People, in fact, did not want to talk about entrepreneurship, and nobody was sitting there saying, I just want to be an entrepreneur. So I sort of gave up, and I, put my vendor card away, and I said, well, I can't sell any entrepreneurship today. So I went up to some people, and I said, hey, look, forget that. And I said, tell me about your life. And a young Egyptian woman said, walk with me. So we went to Tahrir Square, right, where it's all going down, the revolution. And she points to a spot, and she says, right here. And I said, right here what? And she said, right here is where I held my brother while he bled to death the night of the revolution. And I just stood there silently. And then she said, oh, Mr. Hoffman, can I show you my startup? And I said, well, wait, time out. And I said, how do you go from that to this? And she said, Jeff, the whole reason we did that was for this. She said, we gave our lives in order to be in charge of our own future. We fought a revolution because we wanted to be able to design and control our future. And something struck me right then. Entrepreneurship was not the goal. Entrepreneurship was the shovel you used to dig a path to a greater future. When she told me that, I said, tell me about your future. Tell me your dreams. Tell me your goals. And we sat and we talked about her life, what she wants for her future, what she wants for her country, for her family. What are her goals? I asked you all the same question. What is your mission in life? In fact, one of the things I always do is ask people, because I was at a funeral, and at the end of the funeral, I was listening to people talk about the deceased. And I thought, wow, what are they going to say at my funeral? Because if they say something like, oh, that guy drove a nice car, then my life was a waste. So I thought, what do I want people to say? And I realized in my case, I would like the measure of success to be the number of other people's lives that I made better. How many people's lives did you improve with your life? And I realized I want someone to say that at my funeral. So you know what? I better do something with my life that causes that to be the result in the end of it. And when I realized that I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. What I wanted to do was achieve things that mattered to me by picking up the shovel of entrepreneurship and digging, doing the work that I needed to do. So what I did with this Egyptian girl was we drew a path to the best life we could design for her. And then I said, you know what's the best way to get there? It turns out entrepreneurship is a method for controlling your own destiny. Entrepreneurs design their future. Entrepreneurs design the future of people around them while they're going at it as well. She wanted to do that. So that was the lesson for me, is that this is the tool that we use, but it's kind of hard to dig if you don't know what direction you're going. Where is this path headed? Where are you leading to? So I'm going to challenge all of you to do that. What do you want people to say about you at the end of your life? What do you want to have accomplished with your life? And then how can being an entrepreneur make the path to those goals even easier and more direct? Because I believe that it can. So here's the thing. When I meet entrepreneurs now, the first thing they do is hand me their PowerPoint, their business plan, their financials, because that's what we've been trained to do. But I no longer ask. My first question is never, show me your projections. My first question is, tell me your dreams. I want to know what you are trying to accomplish with your life. What is it that matters to you? What do you dream about? What do you want to have people to say about you at the end? That tells me a lot more about who you are and how you will perform as an entrepreneur than your financial projections do. When people are driven by purpose, they far outperform people that are driven by money. When entrepreneurs tell me, I'm going to get rich doing this, and that's the first thought on their mind, I'm far less interested than entrepreneurs that say, I'm going to do something that matters with my life. It bothers me that we, and I'm going to say this on behalf of the whole investment community, which I'm sure is going to get some people angry at me, we're really good at analyzing spreadsheets and projections. We really don't spend much time analyzing lives. What I wish more people would do was analyze people, analyze the investor. What we're trying to find out is, what difference is this human being going to make to the rest of the world if they become successful as an entrepreneur? Instead of just saying, will this business that you're working on right now today generate profits in the near term? I know we're trained to do that. And having a viable business that succeeds financially is important. What I'm saying is, your odds of having a financially successful business are much greater when you as an entrepreneur are driven by some bigger purpose in your life. If all you're driven by is money, then one day you look up, your business isn't going well, you don't see the money on the horizon, you don't see the exit. Guess what happens? Your incentive goes down. I'm doing this for the money, I don't see the money. So you start to deflate. If you're doing this for a purpose that's bigger than money, you will work around that and you will keep driving whether the money is there or not, and the money will show up as a result of that. I am going to not go into this too much, but Chris and I were on a journey together with a group of entrepreneurs on a ship that sailed around the world to many different countries with kind of a big social experiment. All I want to do is point out a couple of the examples. The guy in the red shirt there is named Pedro. He was sailing on the ship that Chris and I are on, mentoring these entrepreneurs. But what was very interesting to me was his startup needs to make money. There's no doubt about it. But what Pedro was focused on was his startup was about water, clean drinking water. He had read the statistic that The number of people that die every day from dirty drinking water is more than all the wars and violence in history combined. More people die from bad drinking water than die from wars and violence. That's pretty significant. So this entrepreneur said, I want to do something about that in my lifetime. And just sort of cut to the bottom line here, in the first city in an African country where his drinking solution was applied as an entrepreneur, the child and infant mortality rate went down 75%. So you know what would be pretty cool at your funeral? If somebody said she reduced the child and infant mortality rate in certain parts of the world by 75%. I think that's a little more significant. My point is that he will be far more driven to build a successful, efficient, and even profitable company because something matters to him. This is another example of one of the entrepreneurs that traveled with us, and I'm just going to do these quickly. He read that in certain parts of like rural India and parts of the world, women don't have stoves, and they go to these communal stoves to feed their family, and they wait in line, and you see most of them are carrying their children. Their average, I think, lifespan is 39 years because they spend all day inhaling thick black smoke, and their babies inhale it because it's the only way they can make food. So he said somebody's got to do something about that. So they invented a smokeless stove that costs like 1/10 of what these other stoves cost, so these women get their dignity back. First of all, they don't die from smoke inhalation and cancer, nor do their babies. And guess what? They're not covered in black soot all day, so everybody knows they're poor. It's an indignity because everyone says, well, she's poor. Look at her. She has to use the community stove. She's covered in black all day. They have a smokeless stove. They can cook at home, restore their dignity, and save their lives. That's a motivated entrepreneur. The last one I'll tell you was an African entrepreneur that we worked with who found out the millions of people in Africa that are deaf. And in Africa, if you can't hear, you're kicked out of society. They don't take deaf kids in school in parts of Africa because it's too difficult to teach them, and you can't get a job. So the World Health Organization said, we'll help, and they sent millions of hearing aids. A month later, all those hearing aids were in landfills. You know why? Hearing aids are great, but nobody in rural Africa has batteries. They can't afford them, and they're not distributed there. So you know what this group of entrepreneurs did? They built a solar-powered hearing aid that requires no batteries, costs like 1/12 what the other one does, and millions of people in Africa can hear now and be part of society again. All I'm trying to tell you is when you have a purpose that's bigger than I want to get rich, you will be an amazing entrepreneur. And guess what? You'll get rich anyway because the world will reward you for creating value and for your passion. Sometimes people say, well, Jeff, my company doesn't change the world. I'm not building a solar hearing aid. You know what? That's kind of weak. Your company may not change the world, but your life can. You can have a company. I know a guy that sells wine on the internet. He's not feeding the hungry or clothing the poor by selling wine on the internet. But you know what he does with his profits? He takes 50% of the money that he makes. Here's an example of one of his projects. He was wondering one day, a woman on his staff was wondering, what happens to women that are homeless or have no insurance, single mothers in inner cities? How do they get a mammogram? The answer is they don't. Right? He was watching they were watching a commercial. So you know what they do? They go into the inner city, they use their company's profits, they find homeless women or unemployed single mothers, and they take them to a hospital and pay for the mammogram. That's what they do with their success. Their company doesn't save the world, but their lives do. Their mission does. So entrepreneurs with a bigger purpose outwork and outperform entrepreneurs that don't have that. I will say as well that everybody has a golden purpose in life. And I use that term, that's something that we use at my company, Color Jar. We were all designed to do something. The question is to find it. Devin and I were having a conversation in the back that a lot of her life, people were telling her what they thought she should do. I lived my whole life being told, what is wrong with you? You never do what you're supposed to do. Well, I don't know who wrote that rule book. What I was supposed to do was go to university, get a job at a big company, and work there my whole life. What I did was I kept starting something, attacking a problem, solving it, and then attacking another one. And people said, Jeff, you're really unstable. Every couple years, you're working on something new. Well, if my big downfall was that people kept acquiring my companies, then I apologize for being such a defective human being. But that was the case. So for years, I thought I was unstable because I said, why can I not just solve a problem and then go solve another one? Because you're not supposed to do that. For a lot of years, I didn't know what was wrong with me. One day, I discovered there is a name for my disease. It's called entrepreneurship, and it's actually okay. You can actually survive from it. It's figuring out what your purpose is in life and designing your life, your companies, and your success around whatever it is you really set out to achieve. Be focused on a higher purpose. Again, the real secret sauce, everything. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room to succeed. Early on, I would see people on stage or on TV, and I would say, she's smarter than me, he's better than me, he's faster than me. Then later when I was blessed enough in my life to meet some of the world's most successful people. And I remember one meeting walking out, and I'll tell you literally what I thought. I walked out and I said, are you kidding me? That dumbass did that? And I thought, if that guy can do that, then what excuse do I have? He wasn't the smartest person in the room, and I actually thought I might even be smarter than that person. The secret sauce is passion. They're not smarter than you, they outwork you. They're dedicated to something that matters. They believe in something. They're driven to get up every single day, and some passion for something in life drives them every day. Those are the people that are most successful, not the smartest person in the room. Entrepreneurship is a great way to lead your life if you have something driving you. So I want to stop now and bring Chris back out because Chris and I wanted to make sure we had time to have a little discussion with you guys. We got some microphones in the audience. Thank you guys for having us today, and please bring us some questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I should just say right now, I don't know whether, Jeff, I love you or hate you. We spent about 10 days together on that cruise on a ship, and I never got a chance to talk to you because the line of students and entrepreneurs to just have time with you, which you so generously gave, was pretty amazing. But I listened into a lot of those conversations. I came off the ship and said, I got to go do something completely different now because I can't not do something without passion. And so thank you for really screwing up my life. I really appreciate it.
Oh, wait, can I just tell a really quick story? From that, I got to tell you guys. So we're on that ship with all these young entrepreneurs and students, and I am telling one of these kids, I said, what's your plan? And he said, well, my plan is to be, sorry, I just got to tell this. He said, I'm going to be a mechanical engineer. That's what I'm studying. And I said, why? He said, my mom's an engineer, my dad's an engineer, my brother's an engineer, and that's what we do. And I said, okay, I said, forget engineering for a minute. And I said, in a world with no gravity, what's your dream? And this kid said, oh man, I love cooking and traveling. And I said, so if you could do anything with no boundaries, what would you do? And he said, I would buy a food truck and I would travel from city to city, feeding people and talking to people and learning about the cities. So, and then I said, all right, well, enjoy your cubicle for the rest of your life. I'm not saying not to be an engineer. I'm saying really, you're just, what is the reason you're following path A versus path B? And he couldn't come up with it because people told me to, he said. And I said, so you're really willing to spend your whole life never doing the thing that you dream about? I don't even get that. So he came back the next day, running down, and he said, Jeff, guess what? He said, I'm not going to do it. And I said, oh shit, the parents are going to kill me. He said, I'm going to call my parents, email my parents from the ship, and tell them I'm not going to be an engineer, that I want to buy a food truck and drive around the world meeting people and cooking. And I was like, okay. And he's looking at me like, dude, this was your idea.
and I just want to say, you got off the ship in Morocco, and the parents were in Barcelona, so you were very clever.
So the next day, he comes running down the hallway after he sends the email in tears down the ship. And I thought, oh my God, I just ruined somebody's life, which is why I said that. And he came up and gave me a big hug. And I started to say, look, I'm sorry, I should have kept my big mouth shut. And he said, even though it was email, I just had the first real conversation I've ever had with my father. And not only did he not shoot me, which is what this kid thought, but he made the down payment on the food truck. Pretty cool story.
Very great story. Cool. Jeff's got a million of those stories because he's so generous. Let's get some questions and hear what you're thinking.
So Bill Gates, Jeff Hoffman, did you come to that higher purpose because you'd been already so successful and you're wondering what people are going to say when you die? Or was that higher purpose always with you? You know, you've built a $45 billion company, you've built 7 startups, and now you're at the next stage where you're sort of thinking, I need to do something good with my life. Was that always part of you? Is that something you wish you'd known earlier in your own path, that you could give back so much?
Well, yes and no. I mean, you can't deny that, you know, if you have business success in your life, it's easier to give back, right? But I kind of think that's weak because when I didn't have a dime, I volunteered my time. So the reason that I didn't sit in a cubicle as an engineer the rest of my life is because I felt like I wanted my life to mean something. I just wanted to feel like I was living with some sense of purpose and some sense of positive impact. So early on, I never set out to be an entrepreneur because I wanted to make money. I set out to be an entrepreneur because I wanted to control my own destiny and be able to take time if I wanted to take a day to help in some way. So the sense of having a life that somehow matters in some way was with me from the beginning. Money was never a driver for me. In fact, money brought a lot of evil the first time I sold a company that I never anticipated. So I was sort of focused on that from the beginning. And yes, of course, there's things you wish you learned in your earlier life, and it is easier as you go. But I came to entrepreneurship to try to achieve something.
And let me just add to this. If you're building a company now, you know that this is hard work. It's all encompassing. It takes all your time, all your energy, probably all your money, and all of somebody else's money too. Why not do something that matters, right? Why spend your time in pursuit of a silly app that may or may not have any value in the world, or when you have the opportunity to use that same time and energy and passion to go do something that you care about and it actually can make a dent in the universe.
And again, if your product itself doesn't make the world a better place, that's fine. It's okay to run a good business, but make sure that your success does, that your life contributes.
Absolutely.
Hello, my name is Sharon. I gotta say, first of all, your speech is very uplifting, but I'm really curious when you discuss with your colleague investors, do they share that point of view? Because I'm afraid, I'm actually building my company with the hope of being one day a philanthropist and an activist and all that, but my fear is that if I put it on my business plan, on my demo, the investor, the angel, the venture capitalist will automatically say that I'm not focused, that I'm not targeting the business, that I'm targeting the right priority. Do you not find that it's an experience?
So let me say two things to that. None of that was ever in my business plan or my PowerPoint. It was in my conversations, though. But Chris made a really important point. When it's time to work, you have to work. Right? One time in an interview, a reporter, after I sold one of my companies, said, "What's the secret to success?" And I remember being offended by the word secret. And I said, secret? The secret is, while everybody else was trying to find the secret, my ass was at work. Okay? There was no secret. When it is time to work, you have to put your blinders on and you have to perform. You have to earn the right to do the other things that you want to do. So I was always focused on getting the job done, but when we were successful, when we achieved things, we would set milestones. And we would say, when we hit this milestone, let's stop and do something fun. We would do a community project. At the end of each project, I'd take a little bit of the money the company made and go and do it. So you are correct. Your focus should be on building something successful and staying focused on the business. But it is okay in conversation to tell investors, look, I don't sit all day and think about money. I'm doing this because I want to make a contribution to the world. And believe me, when an investor hears that you're driven by a purpose other than the next dollar, they know that they can count on you when times are tough.
And what I would add to that is that what I heard in your question was a little bit about like the guy who would say, please God, if I win the lottery, I'll give some of it to charity. Right? Start doing the good work that you want to do now, because that will inform and really drive the business that you want to build. I'm going to build my company and I'll get rich and then I'll be a philanthropist is, I would say, putting that out of order. Go do your good works, the things that drive your heart and give you energy, because that will help you drive your business.
Which is exactly how those projects got woven into our business, because when we had no money and we're a startup, we were still doing things in our community. I completely agree.
There's a question way in the back, and I don't know if there's...
We actually have time.
And we
Okay.
can't hear
Startup
that question.
hockey.
Once more with the mic on.
We only have time for one more question, so we're going to pass it right here.
Hi, Phil Nolting here with Qualify. I had the opportunity last year to head to the Drucker Forum in Vienna, and the main topic of conversation there was that pure capitalism was dead. It's a pretty bold conversation, but a lot of topics like B Corps and the idea of triple bottom lines came up. Could you comment on that? I mean, for those who don't know, B Corps are anything that has either 2 or 3 bottom lines. It's not all about financial, it's either social or environmental as well. There's a huge rise of this whole wave towards actually having social good and social entrepreneurship and social grants. Europe just launched a $6.8 billion social grant. Do you really think that's the future of it, and is capitalism really dead?
I'm not going to tackle whether capitalism is dead. What I will say is that I find it really almost offensive that we put this category of social entrepreneurs somehow separate from any other entrepreneur, as if it's different. Right? I think that these are entrepreneurs who don't need a little pat on the back for doing good work. They're entrepreneurs who are actually going out and building businesses, and by bifurcating them into they're the entrepreneurs who are going to do job creators, and then there are those really nice guys who are doing that social stuff. Aren't they sweet? I think we do a disservice to both. So I have a problem with that bifurcation generally.
So I'll close by saying, first of all, I completely agree. The fact that you can be an entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur, like there's a category, is absurd to me. I don't know who created that. People that wanted to sell more books, I guess. But so I agree with that. But let me just close with this quick story about, quote, capitalism. So I was 20-something years old. I sold my first company to a big Fortune 500 company. Never thought about money. And suddenly one day I sold a company for millions of dollars, and I was 20-something years old. Never planned for money. Never thought about it. Guess what happened? Everybody hated me. Nobody said congrats. People started treating me bad. I didn't know who to trust. It was actually not a fun experience. One day I was really depressed. I was like thinking about that song, Mo Money, Mo Problems. And I was like, well, crap, it's true. I was sitting there and a TV show came on, a news story about a shelter for abused women. All the women on TV were crying because they hadn't paid their mortgage in 4 months, and they were all being sent back to the streets or to the men who abused them. So sitting in that chair one day, I thought, oh my God. Well, here's what I first thought. Oh boy, I hope somebody does something. And then I thought to myself, if everybody watching this news report says, I hope they do something, who does something? Nobody, because we're all hoping they do something. So I went back to my office and I wrote on the wall in giant letters, there is no they. It's us. If you want to make a better world, do it yourself. So guess what I realized? They can hate me because I made money, but you know what I did? I took a bag of that money and I paid the entire next year's worth of expenses for an abused women's shelter. Do I hate capitalism? Not anymore. You know why? Because it occurred to me that I couldn't wait. I didn't feel bad ever again about making money. What I thought was, if I can work really hard, make money, and solve problems that other people can't solve because they don't have money, then I will be back at work with a shovel in hand tomorrow morning. Making money is not a bad thing. Failing to use it for good is.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I left the clip there.